Hello, hello, hello. Come on in and sit down. Welcome, everybody, to the January Lunchtime Learning Series with your favorite Tennessee trainer, perhaps. I don't know. That's probably making an assumption. I'll take it, though. How's everybody doing? I love all these faces, I know. I was sitting here looking at registration going, I mean, most of these people could do this presentation at least as well as I can, because you've certainly been around doing it for a little while. So I have found a way to make today a bit more interactive with some chats and some polls. So we can maybe not just go over the material about the multidisciplinary team and roles and responsibilities, but we can perhaps have some conversation about it. And for those of you that have been doing this for a little while, you can mentor any of the new folks that are in the room hearing some of this for the first time, or I hope, maybe only their second time, because certainly there are people on this call, on this screen that have heard this like 10,000 times, I'm sure. But I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy to see you in 2023. And I don't want to spend too much time on housekeeping, but there are a couple things I wanted to say before we get started. Evaluations for CEUs and CLEs, they're separate, but those will be emailed after the presentation today. So you should see a link emailed from our system, not necessarily from me, but from our system, asking you to fill out the survey. The surveys are open for 2 weeks, and then we close them typically so that we can then move on and create and send the surveys to you. So we really ask that you be as timely as you possibly can getting the surveys submitted to us. We use your survey submission to create your your certificate. And if you are an attorney and you need CLE, we have CLE approval, and you will see that there is a completely separate link for you to complete to basically submit your attendance, your BPR number, so that we can turn around and send your attendance and pay for your training with the CLE TN folks. So if anybody has any questions about any of that, you can drop it in the chat, but that's how that works. I also wanted to make sure that I gave a shout out to the National Drug Court Institute, because Vanessa Price, who is one of our lovely human beings that works at NDCI, she is the go-to if you ever, just FYI, since there's a lot of people on this presentation that could probably do this presentation themselves. There is a form you can fill out if you want to provide the presentation or share the presentation even in paper form. Vanessa Price has a form you can fill out to explain why you want to use the material and how you're going to use it and when you're going to use it and how often. And if you're approved, then you can turn around and use their material. So that's basically what I did for this presentation. This is what I do for all of the NDCI presentations that I do for you guys, is I ask for approval to provide it to you. So I have a permission to do the presentation because they know I do it for them, and to also share the presentation with you afterwards. So I'll send that out in an email to everybody, so you have a PDF copy of it. I also wanted to let you know that we're still working on the scheduling the rest of the lunchtime learnings for this year. We basically are doing one every month that there's not something else going on. It's always the fourth Friday. So for example, we're not doing March because it comes at the coordinator training time. We're not doing, I think it's June, because that's during the NADCP conference in Houston. And we're not doing November because that's the Wednesday right before Thanksgiving Day. Otherwise, we are in process of finding speakers for all of them. I'll probably do a couple like basic ones because we have so many new people. And so if somebody has a request for a basic one, but any of the more fresh, new content, that, there's just so many wonderful people out there. So I have already been talking with Dr. Bridget Ortega that we've had for a couple times at our conference, who is just wonderful. She's going to do one. Joe, who was going to come to the December conference and then got COVID, he was going to do the presentation we had to cancel about how to deal with relapse as a team. I don't know if you guys remember seeing that on the schedule, but I was really excited about it. Joe is a clinician for many, many years, and I've never seen a presentation like the one he was going to do, basically talking about relapse and relapse support for the recovery court team. He's going to come do that for us. That's going to be the one in July. So if you're really interested in seeing that one, definitely make sure that you write down the July. I don't remember what day that actually is in July, but Joe's going to do July. Okay. We also have some really cool state programs and state material that's coming out, and I've reached out to some of them to ask if they would present their material. So all kinds of really cool, fresh stuff, along with some more basic things. I try to mix it up a little bit. If you have somebody that you would love to hear or a topic, please let me know. I'm happy to accommodate you. Okay. Oh, awesome. Welcome, interns, Elaine and Emma. Cool. Okay, so I think I talked about all that. And so let's go ahead and get started on the PowerPoint. Let me try to pull this bad boy up here. And please let me know if you're actually seeing the PowerPoint versus you are. Okay, great. So you might notice that I chose to do roles and responsibilities. It's the presentation that I've done for Justice for Vets, because I have the wonderful opportunity to train with just amazing people all over the country. And I get to do training for the National Drug Court Institute, and I get to do training for Justice for Vets. So a lot of times their material is very similar, but the two divisions get the chance to edit or create their PowerPoints separately from each other. So it's the same stuff as Recovery Court, but there are a couple of things in this presentation I like that aren't in the NDCI specific presentation, including covering some of the Veterans Treatment Court team members that if we have Veterans Treatment Court folks in here, would appreciate us talking about a little bit. So that's what I'm gonna. All right, then. So I'm gonna do that if my screen will move. How do I get you to move? There we go. Okay. So multidisciplinary teams really are about the standard 8, right? Having a number of individuals that are going to that know what they're doing in their particular field, and that are going to come together to basically help folks that are in their program be successful, right? And so these folks, these dedicated individuals, manage all of the day-to-day operations, functions, revisions of those functions, and standard policies and procedures for the entire program, right? If you are on a recovery court team, then you know that these are the kinds of things, at least I hope you know that these are the kinds of things as a team that you do. What you don't do is have one person on the team be responsible for doing all of this. You might have a person that's on your team who's responsible for making sure that it happens, but the team together is really responsible for ensuring that your program is doing what it needs to do in order to basically, do what we all want to do, and that is to help our participants be as successful as they absolutely can, right? Okay. I might have to Okay. So one of the things I'd like to do now, if you would, I would like you to drop in the chat for me, especially if you've been around a little while and you feel like you have an opinion about this. And I would like to know, well, two things. Have you decided that there is a position on the team that's the most difficult, and which one is it? And if you're a seasoned team, what is it that you know for sure gets hard to kind of keep up with after you've been doing this a little while? So there's kind of two questions I have. You can answer both or you can answer one. But I think it's really interesting to see what people's take are on this, because I have an opinion about what I think are probably the more challenging positions on the team. And I also, working with teams all over the country, I really see the kinds of things that after you've been teaming for a while, get more difficult to do. Not necessarily because they are difficult to do, but because you're busy people. You know, you're busy and there's a lot going on. And it's easy, even for me in my position, it's easy to let go of some things that really are of value, but that, you know, what's staring me in the face to be done that day ends up getting what's done, right? So I see Josie says the director position, which I agree, director or coordinator position, right? Because if they have a team that works really well together, then that's great. But could you imagine being on a team and they're all over the country where everybody doesn't get along, and the coordinator is often stuck in these communication triangles, right? Anybody else have I only see Josie's, so I don't know if somebody else is. I'm going to wait until I get some more responses on this. One of the more challenging positions on the team, or things that you see get dropped easily get dropped that need to be done after the team's been around a while. What's hard to keep track of? You can also just unmute if you want to. No? I'm not going to get any other responses in here.
Hey, Marie, this is Cindy Richards.
Hi.
Yes. Montgomery County. I agree with Wes that the director coordinator position, and you know, Ms. Robertson is our director over the not only recovery court but the probation office, because we are combined here under one umbrella. So so it's a little bit more of a task there with me as far as the coordinator, because I also not only do the coordinator for recovery court, but also we have a programs division, which is our licensed DUI school, running groups for MRT or the domestic violence group. So I'm also kind of doing that as well, overseeing that part of it. So it's like I don't have the 100% devotion, you know, to this, you know, obviously. So that kind of creates some issues. Plus, thank goodness I just got Mr. Odell, who's on this webinar with us, hired last week. So I'm glad that he's joining our team, and hopefully will help relieve some of that, you know, just free me up a little bit more of what I would like to be. I think on the other side, the difficult part is I think I've been through maybe 3 DAs in the last few years. Just because they get promoted, they go up to circuit level. And then we got one lady that's been on it for past, you know, maybe close to a year, and she's about ready to retire. So now another gentleman is coming in. And also to the DA's office, they either have 1 or 2 people that do the NCIC checks. So sometimes it delays us on accepting folks in the program, and they may be, you know, what we like to do, a 2-week turnaround from time we get the referral to acceptance. But because of that NCIC and waiting, it's created a little bit of, not, I don't want to say hardship or any hard feelings, so to speak, but it's just that wait period that we're kind of like stuck until we do get that information to see, make sure they are, you know, as far as the record goes, not anything violent in nature, and that the DA will approve of their application. So.
Super hard when you have a the timeline you're trying to keep, and you have absolutely no control about somebody else's timeline, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
makes a difference.
I think
So,
you bring up a point that I think is important for people to remember too, and that's that, you know, coordinators and director positions are not all the same because you use the resources from your local community. Oftentimes you look like what you need to get the job done, and that
Mhm.
doesn't look in Montgomery County what it might look like in the city of Jackson, for example,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Natasha
So,
also said it's hard to keep up with when POs change regularly and multiple PO agencies involved. And that's another great example. What's interesting to me is um, when I've asked this question in other presentations, and to me, when I look at this through my lens of training and technical assistance, every single thing that has been brought up at this point is really about how do you keep every team member trained up and oriented to their role, because you have turnover, because DAs do retire and they do move, and judges get elected and not elected, and you know, these kinds of things happen. And so one of the things that the thing that seems to touch all of the issues that come up is really around, you know, does everybody actually know what they're doing? Are they the third person in that role? And so what they do, they've kind of made it up themselves in some ways because, you know, they weren't the first person doing it. Is there actually a really solid orientation and training protocol to make sure that everybody knows exactly what was done the way we intended it to be done, you know, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago? And often that's one of the things that gets dropped the most because it's hard to not think about. I think about it because it's what I do. But it's hard to think about when you've got 15,000 other things that are on your plate and on any given day, right? But it's also one of the things that, to me, if you had one of those solid orientation and ongoing trainings in place to mitigate some of those things, they wouldn't be as difficult, or maybe even veer you off course in a way that sometimes you get veered off course. It's really interesting to think about. All right. So this is basically the composition of your team, right? You've got a number of folks that basically come together to do all of these different things that are related to their specific field. And the reason that recovery court teams are so absolutely effective is because of this collaboration between your court personnel and your treatment personnel. The program could not exist with these two, right? I mean, it is a justice system program. So there has to be policies, procedures, processes in place that are related to court structure. And so these folks know about court structure, judge, prosecutor, supervision, defense, etc., probation. And then you've got treatment. It will not be an effective program for our eligible participants without the treatment piece. And so you need these folks who are around community resources, the treatment piece, mental health piece, etc., right? And without those functioning properly, without everyone understanding what their role is and what their role is not, it can get sideways. And if you've ever been on a sideways team, you know it. Okay, I have a poll. I'm gonna launch it. Let's see. Who makes the final decision about team response to behavior? Is it the team? Is it the judge? Is it the prosecutor? Because they have an opinion. Is it treatment? Is it law enforcement? Who makes that decision? Who makes the final decision on team response? Can give you guys a few more seconds here. All right, we're going to call that good. So we had some folks say it's the team, and we had some folks say it's the judge. Notice nobody else got any kind of props at all. And the answer is the judge. Okay. The cool thing about staffing is that you get a chance to provide your expertise and insight to the judge. And if you have a judge worth their salt, then they are going to take every single person's feedback about the participant and what you should or shouldn't do. And we're talking incentives, and we're talking sanctions, and we're talking therapeutic adjustments, okay? But that person is going to listen to everything that you have to say. And then that judge is going to make the ultimate decision, because that's their job. It is the judge's job to make the call, the final call. It is the judge's job to change their mind on the bench if they receive information that they didn't have. And it is the judge's job to ensure that they make the best decision that they can using the information that you've been given. Does that mean if you have a judge that never listens to a darn thing that you say, that's cool? No, that's not going to be a very effective team environment, right? But ultimately, your judge is the one that is going to basically get in trouble, I guess is a way to put that, if in fact there is something wrong with the decision. They, as the authority of the court, cannot relinquish their authority to any one other person on the team. They can't do it. It's not legal, okay? So they are the ultimate authority. And if you have a good judge, they're hearing every single person on the team, but ultimately it is their decision. They are the final decision maker. But in a recovery court, we also know that our judges need to demonstrate empathy, compassion, consistency. If they want to go even above and beyond, they are doing some motivational interviewing and identifying and helping folks walk through and talk through their behavior and how it may be impacting them, whether on a positive or a negative, because we know court is theater, and both of those conversations can be very beneficial for the participants, right? So one of the things we also know, I don't know why my button's not working, but it's just not. So I push the button like 4 times and then it decides it wants to move. I haven't figured out what that's about yet. One of the things that we know, there are 3 main buckets of research around the judge. And that is that if the judge spends on average 3 minutes with each person, then we see an increase in cost savings and a decrease in recidivism, a decrease in folks, basically being rearrested, okay, coming back into the system. So there's this magic 3 minutes. And it's average. So sometimes a judge may not spend 3 minutes, but sometimes a judge might spend 5 or 10, even if there's really something going on, right? As long as everybody is getting a chance to engage and there is some rapport being built, that's the value in there. And that 3 is sort of a magic number in our research methodology. What we also know is that if the judge is voluntary, which is our judges in Tennessee, but every state is not like that, okay? But if the judge is voluntary, then there's also a reduction in recidivism and an increase in cost savings, because why? That person wants to be there, right? That person already has some sort of a personal investment of some sort, because they want to do this program, versus somebody who's being forced to do this program as the judge, because that probably does come across. And then for judges that, you know, are around for a while. And it's the one of the other pieces I don't see on this slide is the effectiveness of the judge increases significantly after they've been doing their job for 2 years. So when you get a new judge, for those of you that have new judges, they just don't really know what they're doing yet, just like you didn't know what you're doing yet. And it takes a couple of years for them to really get in their groove. And programs that have the judge for longer than 2 years, they will see an increase in their efficiency and effectiveness in the program. It's really interesting. All right, now we're going to keep hitting this. There we go. These are the judge's duties. I'm not going to go over this in a whole lot of detail. You guys know what the judge does, right? And you know that they are the final authority. And you know that if we have a judge that is shaming, bullying from the bench, you know, any of those kinds of things, that it's not appropriate. You talking about personal things that person didn't bring up, you know, confidentiality is certainly very important. You guys know this, but it's also right here. You can see the judges. Oh, okay. If I use my mouse, it'll scroll better. I think I'm going to start using my mouse. Okay, so program coordinator. I think I have another poll here. Let's see. No, Marie, get back. I'm going to pull that poll. We'll launch this one. Who's in charge of facilitating communication between team members, partner agencies? You know, you often have folks that are on the team, I mean, that are not on the team, but that are highly invested in your work, right? And while they may not sit there on the staff meeting every time, they certainly care about what's going on. This is obvious. I'm going to share these. Everybody made a 100 on this. It absolutely is the coordinator. It is for those programs that don't have a coordinator. Sometimes they figure it out. The case manager might do it, or supervision might do it, or there might be somebody that's designated to have dual roles, but somebody has got to herd the cats, right? That's just the bottom line. Somebody's got to herd the cats, and if the cats aren't herded, then you know, you can't get anywhere. I don't know how to say your name, but I see somebody's got their hand up. Did you have a question?
It's Nico. It's
Hi.
Nico. It's okay. I just had a question on your last slide because I'm fairly new to the position, but the judge that I have, he does a little bit of the like bullying my clients. And it's just kind of hard because when he's older, so I really want to be respectful, you know. We're Southern, we're supposed to be respectful of our elders, but also like, I don't want to come off like rude, but like, don't be mean to my clients. Like, I just don't know how to like correct him without coming across like a subordinate.
What is your role on the team?
I'm their mental health court coordinator, so I have for them.
Have you spoken with do you have a coordinator for your program?
No, it's me. It's me.
Oh, okay. You are the coordinator. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm just new.
It is really challenging.
Yeah.
So what I suggest people do first is try to find a way to get some sort of training information that is relevant to the judge, either by way of a lunch and learn, where the team, you know, listens to a specific topic, or by providing handouts of like research related material. Like there is research about the judicial demeanor. I could share with you if you wanted to email me, Nico, that you could, you know, it's a more passive way of seeing if you can get the point across, because sometimes they don't know. But you could pass it out and then highlight points so that you make sure that they are seeing the material, because sometimes they might not read it, but you can highlight points. You can, I mean, there are a couple different ways that you can maybe bring the information to your judge and see if your judge is like, oh, I'm doing that, and see if there is a change. You can also have folks come in who are experts like myself or the state folks or NDCI that can come also without saying, you know, you're bullying people, judge. Now, there are judges out there that are able to say that. I would not directly say that to a judge. either,
Right.
okay?
Right. I was
I
like,
just
I don't
want
want
you
to
to
do
know.
that, but you're clearly bullying my client. And I'm like,
Yes. I mean, I do also think though, Nico, you could, if you felt comfortable, you could say, maybe even privately, when you say this to my clients, I'm uncomfortable with it because it feels shaming to me. As a
okay,
mental health professional, we are taught blah, blah, blah,
yeah. Okay.
without sort of finger pointing. You can't, I mean, I think that's totally appropriate, but I understand judges are all very different and they take feedback in different ways. So
Yeah.
sometimes providing the information more subtly is helpful. And sometimes, you know, if you have a really good relationship with the judge, you can say, you know, you're bullying people, judge. Some of the people on this call might be able to say that to their judge. But it really depends on the personality of the judge too, right?
Yeah. And mine's, he's been on the bench a very long time.
Mhm.
And
So he knows what he's doing.
yeah. Yeah. So like, I don't want to, I'm like, I know I'm new, but like, and we're from different generations, but like, bro, you are clearly being a bully on the bench. Like,
Yeah. And I don't think I see a judge on here. If I did, I would ask them what their suggestion would be. Sometimes we do have them, but I don't see one in here. Yeah.
We
I
do
mean,
that too, Marie, where like sometimes we just print out information and we're like, hey, like the state released this and they wanted you to read it and give it to them.
yes, that's even a little bit more direct but subtle. The state asked us to share this information with all the judges.
Yeah.
okay, I'm about to use that because he's not a tyrant, but he could be a tyrant. And like to the wrong client, he could break them. And I'm like, please don't break my clients. They're already fragile as it is.
Mhm.
Like, it was an
Yes.
intense session last week.
So, an in-service, like, you know, during, like right before, after your staffing or something like that, where you bring in somebody that maybe isn't even you, that is the mental, but, you know, maybe part of your organization or whatever, that could come in and talk even about trauma and trauma-informed interaction. I mean, and there is material out there about that for the judge too, that if you email me, I can share that with you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a good question because, you know, it's difficult. If the person who is basically in charge of your program is being careless and abusive to your participants, right? I mean, we know that all of these folks that are coming into our programs have been traumatized, little t, big T, all the above T's, and often by people who are individuals in authority. So you guys had the coordinator right. I also have gone over the fact that it's different for everybody. Your organizations, your structure, your community, you're going to make the coordinator / director position fit your resources. And those look different depending on your community. So you might have, if you're a small place, you might have a coordinator that also does all the case management or supervision for your program. If you are in Davidson County, Chattanooga, City of Jackson, even, you have too many people to do that, for one person to do that. And those resources need to be more delegated. If the program is run a little bit out of supervision, like what Cindy was talking about, then you have even a different delegation. Sherry, who she was talking about, the director's very involved with Recovery Court. She does a lot of the more higher administrative things, and Cindy takes care of the more administrative things specifically related to her program. But she's also got a whole other job that isn't related to Recovery Court at all. And that often happens. Both of them do. And that often happens as well. You got to figure out what's going to work for your area. But herding cats, like I said, be kind to your coordinators because they need to be organized. They need to be efficient. They need to, know what's going on with every single person. They need to know what's going on with every single team person. I mean, they are thinking ahead about what needs to happen in 3 months. They're thinking ahead about what needs to happen next year. They are thinking about you all the time, and they're thinking about the participants all the time and what is needed in order to maintain or to be successful. So they are, you can't underestimate the value of that human being on your team. So you can be nice to them because they deserve your compassion and respect. All the coordinators going, Marie, we love you. Okay, so moving on. The prosecutor. The wonderful thing about a recovery court is that we have this non-adversarial situation going on, right? Which is unique to recovery courts because the prosecutor and defense have agreed that they're going to put down their swords while we're in this bubble and maybe not hug each other, but have conversations that will help a person move past a revolving door situation, which is what both of them have seen from their people that are our kind of people who are eligible for recovery court, right? And they want to do something different, knowing that that person is going to have to actually get services so that they don't come back, because the prosecutor ultimately wants to save money for their community, and they want to keep their community safe. They don't want to see the same person coming back over and over and over again, because that person is just an increased risk to the community every single time they go to jail and come back out, right? And so that is their ultimate goal. The defense counsel, their ultimate goal is to provide counsel, provide responsible counsel and accurate counsel to their clients. And so they are going to try to get the best deal for their client as possible. But in this situation, the best deal is maybe a deal that puts them in the system longer, right? So that person has to agree in the state of Tennessee that that's what they want to do, and that that's the deal they consider best for them. Because otherwise, defense is going to suggest a much shorter time involved in the justice system if they can get away with it. That's their job, right? So we have this amazing non-adversarial situation where those two individuals are working collaboratively in an effort to help this person with a substance use disorder and or mental health issues successfully mitigate the justice system and not come back. So they do all of the legal paperworky kind of stuff, right? The stuff that the rest of us probably don't want to deal with anyway. And one of the cool things about the prosecutor is, if you look at, and I think it's on here, the cost savings for when your prosecutor is involved is incredible. And if you think about how bogged down the court system gets, it makes sense, right? That your prosecutor, if they're involved and they're able to expedite these cases, and even expedite cases that aren't necessarily related to why they're in recovery court, that is a savings to the court system and an efficiency to the court system that is really hard to calculate. But some of our evaluations have done that and have found that there is such high cost savings, such cost value when your prosecutor is involved, because of all of those things that they can do. Oh, there it is. See, 171% increase. So when you see that and you're like, how do you increase 171%? Just to be clear, it is an increase relative to programs that don't do it, don't have a prosecutor. So they're looking at a relationship, or looking at this one versus that one. This program does not have the prosecutor participating and this one does. That's why you're going to see something that's more than 100% basically the value of having the prosecutor is that much more. Okay, I think I've got a poll here. I want to throw out my poll if I can find it. I'm losing all my stuff today. It's like, where's all my stuff? Oh, here we go. All right. I think it's this one. Oh, I can't launch it. Well, it's basically what we just talked about anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, moving on, Marie. So the defense attorney, right? The defense attorney. So I asked the question, who you thought had one of the harder jobs? And this is my answer. I think the coordinator's got a hard job, and I think the defense attorney has a hard job. And it's really because of their ethical requirements and how they fit on the recovery court team. You know, if defense counsel agrees to participate on the team, that does not mean that they can just completely relinquish any responsibilities that are theirs as defense. So they may stop being like that individual's attorney, but they cannot completely wash their hands of the responsibilities and the ethics of their field. That's not what it's meant to do. I think recovery courts got a little sideways when we first started operating in like decades ago, where public defenders just sort of stopped doing their job. And there was pushback from that because we have rights as citizens of the United States. The US Constitution, there's something that's called the Sixth Amendment. Does anybody know? You can chat or unmute yourself and tell me if you know what the Sixth Amendment is about. I don't even know if we have any attorneys on here. Does anybody know? Let me just make sure I don't see anything in chat. Okay. So the Sixth Amendment is basically a citizen's right to a speedy trial, a right to be heard in court, and a right to counsel. The Sixth Amendment says basically that a defense attorney cannot just wipe their hands of defense attorney responsibilities because they're on a recovery court team. What that means is there are things that you may not like as the other team members that are obligations of defense. For example, if a participant comes to the public defender and divulges that they have done something, often it is like they've used, right? So a participant comes to defense counsel and admits that they've used and they want advice. If that person has not shared and there is no positive drug screen or anything yet, when you get into team meeting, you think the public defender should tell you that that person used? Because most public defenders are going to tell you no. That if that person has come to them in confidence and has not given them permission to share that information, then the defense counsel might be sitting there in team with you knowing that this person used on Friday and Saturday and Sunday and Monday. And they can't tell you. Now the defense counsel can say, you've come to me for advice. So here's my thought about this. You know, it makes sense to you to come clean because that's part of your program, right? Rules in the participant handbook say, and this is why defense counsel needs to know what your participant handbook says. Participant handbook says, you know, we're asking you to be honest, that you might not be perfect at it, but we want you to try. And this is an opportunity for you to do that. as you've seen in the past, a lot of times your sanction or, consequence is going to be not as bad if you go ahead and fess up instead of them catching you in a lie, right? Because otherwise your consequence is probably going to be worse because you're demonstrating, one, that you can't tell the truth, that you're not willing to tell the truth, and two, that, you have also broken a rule by not divulging use. So the defense counsel, using some motivational interviewing, etc., can encourage that person to share on their own, which is a very cathartic thing that can happen for the participant. But ultimately, my point about defense is they can't just drop their ethics and what they're in the court system to do. So they may be a part of the team and understand that they're teamy, and some of their feedback might be related to things that they know that you might not. But there are going to be times when defense is going to be sitting in the room with you and they're going to know something you don't, and they can't tell you. They're going to choose not to tell you. And that's okay. Treatment does it too. Right? That's why trusting your team members to do their job and not trying to do their job for them is important, because they're making those decisions based on the ethics of their own jobs, and that's what they're supposed to do. It would actually break down the process, and you would have lane creep, people getting into other people's lanes, and you would have participants begin to not trust the process and trust you if you started talking about stuff that is not cool from their ethical obligations in their field to talk about. Hopefully that makes sense. Does somebody have a question or comments about that?
Me.
Yay.
Hey, what do you recommend? Like, our clients don't necessarily just have like straight access to the public defender at all times. Like, how do you facilitate that? Like, usually if our clients are like in danger of like a jail sanction, we'll like set up a meeting with them with the public defender so they can like hear their side and stuff. But like, do other courts like how are they just chatting with the public defender and telling them stuff,
So what I have seen other communities do is have a private attorney provide defense counsel like as a consultant, or a private attorney contracted to be on the team as defense, or a private attorney even do their pro bono work as part of the recovery court team, so that there is, so that those individuals' civil rights are protected, constitutional rights are protected, particularly around the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, because everybody has a right to counsel in this country. But it is challenging if you don't have a public defender just willing to come and be on the team and be available. So I've seen private attorneys do it, and I've seen paid attorneys do it and pro bono, and I've seen consultants hired. I think this actually, I thought one of the slides said something about consultants. I'm sorry, what?
I said that might actually be a good idea for us, like asking a private attorney, because our public defenders are so swamped all the time, and whenever we ask them to do something, they get really overwhelmed.
I mean, if you're looking at ways to shore up your program around best practices so that your program is airtight from criticism, then all your participants need access to defense, representation. And it's one of those areas I feel like a lot of programs in the country, they just they get lazy about it, because nobody is really saying anything about it. But it's also something that could really get recovery courts into trouble. Okay, so we've talked about defense counsel, and the research is obvious that them being a part of the process is also saving you money and reducing recidivism in your program. Of course, you can't have the court compliance piece without supervision or probation officer, whatever that looks like in your program, right? You can't do that without them. They're the ones that are maintaining the records of compliance around all of the court requirements, drug screening. If your program does home visits, they're maintaining records for and going and visiting your participants in their homes or at their jobs to ensure that everybody's where they said they are and that their living conditions are acceptable, and that they don't have anything going on in their environment that you don't want them to have conducive to program success, right? But again, that is going to look so different depending on where you are. Some programs, they have case managers that really do a lot of the more supervision kind of things because probation is a little less hands-on. And sometimes probation is doing all of that and your program doesn't have a person like that. Probation and supervision are very active in Montgomery County where Cynthia is because a lot of their programming is run through them, right? So it really just depends. And then you have programs that they do the case management and treatment for themselves, all in-house, and probation just sort of checks a box that somebody is still in the program or whatever. Really just depends on your community, resources available to you, the demeanor of the local organization. A lot of programs pulled treatment in because they didn't have a good provider in the area that would work with them, or they couldn't get beds or spaces or whatever. And so they started pulling in those services so that they could actually have services for their participants where they could engage as quickly as possible and, get access, to quality services that they needed. But you also have treatment on your team, and depending on what you are doing with your team, you might have substance use disorder treatment and you might have mental health treatment too. If you're a mental health court, your mental health treatment person will be the primary person, and you'll probably also have somebody that is with substance use disorder. But mental health courts don't. In mental health court, you don't have to have a substance use disorder to go into mental health court. So that might be a person that is called in for certain cases and then they leave for the rest of them kind of thing. But that is certainly appropriate, and mental health and substance use are pretty typical folks for your team. I have a poll. Where's my poll? Oh. How long have I been muted?
You're not muted.
Oh, okay. I think I must have just done it to myself. For some reason, I can't launch my poll. So how long does the most effective treatment last? You can just come off a mute or put it in chat. What do you think? How long's treatment?
Like inpatient treatment or?
How long does the most effective treatment last? It's really about a number of hours.
Oh.
But you can put it in amount of time. This has come out of the recovery court research. So if you've looked at any of the best practice standards, you might know the answer to this question. I am trying to, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat and see. Okay, which were you gonna, no, okay. So as we all know, a lot of times if somebody's going inpatient, they're going to do like 30 days, right? And if they go into outpatient, it's going to be like maybe 6 to 8 weeks, right? The most effective treatment is between 9 and 12 months, 220 hours of treatment. Pretty amazing, huh? So in order to get the right amount of treatment, you have to get into the justice system. Because people with standard insurance aren't going to get enough treatment, right? Crazy to think about. But it is one of the reasons I think recovery courts are really effective, because services last a long time with us, right? Which is great for our folks, because we have high need individuals and they need extensive treatment services and comprehensive treatment services. There's a lot we could talk about treatment, but obviously I don't have a ton of time. But here it is, last 9 to 12 months with at least 200 hours of counseling over the course of treatment. That seems to be like the 9 months seems to be like the minimum to ensure that that there's become some internalization of the tools and the skills that you have started working on with the participants when they came in. They've had enough time within that kind of time frame to really establish some better patterns of behavior and processes for themselves. If you're a veterans treatment court, there's 2 roles in this presentation that are unique to you, and that is the Veterans Justice Outreach person. In the state of Tennessee, the Veterans Treatment Courts, if anybody is with a VTC on here, you're welcome to type up, especially if I say it wrong. But the VTCs in Tennessee share these VJOs who are employed by VA and often have a lot of other things that they're supposed to be doing besides working with Veterans Treatment Courts. But a lot of times they will sort of do a rotation and they will go from like staffing to staffing. They'll go to Montgomery County, on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday they'll be in Nashville, and then on Thursday they'll be in in Rutherford County, kind of thing. And they sort of will do this regional situation. And I think it was 2 years ago or something that they added, or maybe last year they added more VJOs. So I think that allowed the VJOs to have a better presence and maybe also not be dragged around the state so much. They are a great liaison for the community and the team and the VA in ensuring that those connections are made for veterans and VTCs. Another piece, another team member that I think often doesn't get on the team. Curious how many of you have law enforcement on your team, but this is one of those that sometimes it can be really challenging to get a law enforcement on your team. Does anybody not have law enforcement on their team?
Ours just retired, and so we're looking for a new one.
Anybody else not have one? I know Cindy has one. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Trish. I just now noticed. So Trish was responding to the public defender. She says we have the public defender on treatment team as well as private defense attorney that shows up for court. So this is one of the things I've seen. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Going back to defense counsel, one of the things I have seen is like public defender is on the team and is doing the more teamy things. And if somebody needs counsel, they have another person come in and they provide the individual counsel, right? Because it is, there's just a conflict between those two that it just is. It just is what it is. And they have to navigate those waters. But yes, I've seen that in many places where they've got somebody that will come in when that is necessary. Thank you, Trish, for saying that. Okay, so law enforcement can provide a lot of things. And to me, the law enforcement position is one of the best positions for community buy-in, because if the law enforcement in your town decides that recovery courts work, hashtag recovery courts work, when they make that decision, they talk about it and they tell people and they impact their peers, and their support is of great value in communities. And so if for no other reason than having law enforcement be on your side and to see the benefit of the program so that they can share that, there's value in that in and of itself. There's also significant value for the participants to see law enforcement give a crap about them, because they definitely think that is not the case. And honestly, sometimes it's not the case. But law enforcement is better off. It's just like judges. If you talk to any judge ever that's done recovery court, they'll say it's one of the best things I ever did in my life. Law enforcement's the same, and you get law enforcement on board and they're on board. And the same is true for law enforcement and participants. I think they both benefit in so many ways from seeing each other in that environment. I don't know if anybody else wants to pipe in and say how they've seen that in their program or whatever. Does anybody have a story or a comment about that?
Sorry, I had to step away. I missed a question, but I will say that Captain Leanne Wilson has been on our team for several years. She's with the Clarksville Police Department and very involved in the program. And just so happened last week, I got word of a person that was AWOL, and I was able to shoot her a text with the address, and she coordinated and they picked up the young lady. So luckily got her back into custody before something tragic could have happened.
Thank you, Cindy. Anybody else have like a law enforcement story for their program? Sometimes it really depends on the position of that person. If they are in the community and are able to, sometimes they will go on home visits, or they will kind of drive around and see people doing what they're supposed to do and wave. Or, there are just so many things that they can do as part of your team. You definitely want to make sure law enforcement feels the love and that they feel like they're a valuable component of the team. If they don't feel that way, then when they do leave, it's hard for them to want to tell the next part. It's hard for them to want to say, hey, you really need to do this. This is awesome. It's a great experience. I love being on the recovery court team, as opposed to, I don't do jack. If you don't want to do it, if you didn't show up, they probably wouldn't even notice. The other cool thing I like is that, and the law enforcement person can help, is I love inviting the arresting officer to graduation. Like a formal invitation. In fact, I've even seen programs where the individual who is in the program graduating writes the invitation and it gets sent to the arresting officer. I think that is really cool. Good community, good community work and marketing for your program, and your law enforcement can also help with that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this. I'm looking at my time. I want to make sure I have enough time. Also, you got people coming out of jail. You've got folks that are, getting stopped for speeding. You've got all of these things happening that are related to the justice system, and you need to have regular communication and relationships with your jail partners, with your sheriff's office or city police. Even if they're not on your team for whatever reason, they need to be part of your steering committee, a part of the partnership that you create to talk about and support your program that may be outside of your staff, because you need their buy-in in order to have access to all the resources that you need to help your participants be successful. And looky there, there's a lot of value in having them at the table. Also, one that a lot of folks don't have access to, I'll bet none of you have an evaluator on the team. Anybody have an evaluator on the team? That's a tough one. Tough one. So if you have the opportunity, like if you have a college or university in your area you can partner with, you don't necessarily have to have the professor, but if they have interns that need to do work, sometimes you can get them to come and help you. The two biggest benefits of an evaluator that is participating in an already implemented program is going to be process evaluation, meaning they can look and tell, are you doing what you say you're doing? Or are there some processes that have sort of gotten sideways and is actually not working the way you think it is? And then they can also look at your numbers and look at outcome information. Are your people actually staying out of the system like you think they are? Or are they coming back, and at what rate, and what's happening that they're coming back? I mean, there's all kinds of data, and if you've been around a little while, we're not getting that data from the state yet. I don't know when that's going to happen. They've got issues, particularly with not necessarily at the felony level, but at the misdemeanor level, like City of Jackson. You're kind of screwed there. They don't have that kind of data to be able to give you that kind of outcome information. And so if you really want to know the outcomes of your program, right now it is on you to do that. Outside of the stuff that the state is collecting around custody issues and employment and all of those also very, very amazing outcomes you need to be collecting. But recidivism data is something that we're not really collecting very well in the state of Tennessee as of yet. Because of our data systems. So that's something that your evaluator could also do for you. Process evaluation and outcome evaluation. Local community college, universities, ask about interns, ask about whether it's possible to even do give and take. Like, could you provide a space for interns? Right? Where they could come and do things that aren't necessarily for you, but for them to be able to get hours. There might be ways for you to develop those kind of partnerships. For veterans treatment courts, they have a mentor component. They have a mentor coordinator that coordinates mentors, volunteer folks with military, they're veterans, basically. They don't have to have any kind of substance use, mental health, anything like that. The criteria for mentors in veterans treatment courts is that they serve their country. And so the coordinator, who often is not in staffing necessarily because there's information that's really not appropriate for them to know. Although I do know that there are some VTCs that have their coordinator in there and they're vehemently in support of it. I'm not in support of the coordinator being in there hearing information they shouldn't be hearing, that I don't think they should hear. That's beside the point. The coordinator basically ensures that the mentors are trained and that they are following the rules of engagement with the folks, and that there is a process by which the mentors are able to connect with the participants. The mentors are of significant value to veterans. In the same way, but not exactly the same as like peer support, right? If you had a certified peer support specialist on your program, they have a lot of things they can do a mentor can't do. So please don't hear me say that they're the same, but peer support is lived experience, right? And there is a lot of value in having folks with lived experience as part of your program in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot about mentors in this particular PowerPoint that I don't need to go over. This 238% cost savings. So what we started with, where I was asking, what do you see kind of get off whack and, problems, et cetera. And And then I gave my 2 cents about training and how if you have some really solid training protocols for orientation for new people and then ongoing, that, that often can alleviate those kinds of things. And I think that this cost savings piece right here is like the reason. It demonstrates why that is in fact the case. Because if you have provided all the training that your team members need to do their jobs effectively, then you as a team are more effective. And that's anywhere from just the basics of recovery court to how to communicate effectively as a team. That's one of the presentations that NDCI does, but often sometimes, especially with certain personalities, it's really tough to get into a group situation and feel heard and feel like your feedback is respected and considered. If your judge isn't one of the judges that will ensure that every last person at the table has had an opportunity to say something, doesn't say anything bad about them, but if they're not like that, then the quiet person on your team has an opinion and it's not getting heard. And so, those kinds of things can affect the efficiency of your team. And when you begin to talk as a team about communication and your communication styles and, how you best receive information and how you deliver information, all of those can really help the efficiencies of your team too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be straight up recovery court training. It can be team building kind of training too, which is stuff that you can do like as part of a retreat for your staff, for your team. I don't know how many of you guys do if anybody on the call do like team retreats. Yeah. I think those are all, I'm in the team building anyway, right? I would really annoy those people that don't like to do the little activities, the icebreakers. I love icebreakers. But having those very candid conversations builds trust, it builds rapport, it builds connection among your peers. When you like the person or at least care about them and understand that they, what their life is like, it's a lot easier to just be kind and compassionate at the way you come at them when you're disagreeing with them, as opposed to somebody that you think is slimy, that you don't trust, that all of those things. You're not necessarily going to come at them in a way that's going to get where you need to go. And overdoing that kind of negative communication in group is going to ultimately make your environment toxic. I've seen it so many times. I know that it happens. Anyway, that's a soapbox I'm going to get off of because you guys know that. Everybody that knows me knows how I feel about all that, I think. Okay, so all these are different examples. And then, of course, you've got folks that are part of your team that aren't part of the core team, right? And those also, are great opportunities to make your program efficient by accessing resources that they may have, which ultimately what you want is for your participants to be successful, right? And that's what we all want. We want our participants to be successful and to engage in their life in a meaningful way. And so these folks that are on this screen are often part of that process. Okay, I can't believe it. I did not get all of my polls done, and I did not get all my chats in. So I'm a little disappointed about that because I had all kinds of more questions. But if you have questions, I've got another 60 seconds or so, or comment. I'm gonna take this down because you don't need to see the word questions to ask a question, do you? Anything? Okay. So you will, thank you very much for being here. I'll stay on in case somebody has something they want to say after and they're just shy to do it right now. But thank you for being here. You will see an evaluation completed ASAP so that you can get your certificate. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Marie.
Bye.
Hey, I might ask you just a random question that
Let
doesn't
me
have to do with
turn the recording off.